Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Another exciting week. Happy holidays, in fact. It's Eid al-Maulud.
Yeah, happy Eid al-Maulud to our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
It's a great holiday, great weekend, characterized with a lot of events. I mean, Shaita had a big show at the GT Fashion Week. There are lots and lots of shows in the city of Lagos, and just gearing up for the holiday. Everybody's getting ready. And the political scene, too, a lot has been happening. We recently saw that event going on, the African Investment Forum itself in South Africa. We had a very amazing speech there by the African Development Bank president and also the president of South Africa, Kemi Adeosun, and also the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, talking about the fact that, you know, South Africa is not xenophobic. They are ready for business. Sort of like the Oscars of African finance out there. And it's been a great one for Africa. The Rugby World Cup is here. Everybody's all in a celebratory mood. Yesterday, the big one, big kudos out there, you know, to the Copy Foundation.
Yes, that was awesome,
and
amazing.
A presentation of 5 billion naira.
By her daddy. And he's being dubbed the father of the year now.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah?
definitely.
Oh, yeah?
Amazing. Just to do things for those kids who have been, we know that region has been ravaged by insurgency. Children out of school,
I think that's about,
misplaced.
Yeah, I think that's about the biggest donation to charity this year.
5 billion.
Have you seen anything that topped that?
I don't think I've come across
in Nigeria?
No.
In Nigeria, definitely.
We also know Aliko Dangote made some donation as well.
Yeah.
Well, 100 million, billion, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 100 million from Dangote yesterday.
And yesterday was also the premiere of the first opening night of the Afrima. African...
Afrif.
I said Afrima, so I'm thinking Afrif.
Yes, African International Film Festival.
Yes, yesterday. It's going to be going on all week. And yesterday, yes, apparently the movie, I've gotten a lot of feedback, and the movie was really, really good. A documentary about a woman that survived the war in Aleppo.
Yeah,
so you know,
lovely story.
Very open.
I mean, I bet there was no dry eye in the hall there yesterday. But hey, government expenditure, it's another one, and how government spends money on things like rent, you know?
That's what we're going to look at now. By the way, I'm Adeosun Moran. She's Shaita Atigari, and he's Rufai Hussaini. And let's begin the show proper.
Let's do it.
Now, the dust is yet to settle on the 2020 proposed appropriation bill presented by President Muhammadu Buhari. The 2020 budget proposal submitted to the National Assembly reveals a budget of 12.3 billion naira for residential and office rent.
It will be recalled that the former Minister of Finance, Ms. Kemi Adeosun, in 2016 lamented the huge cost being incurred by the federal government on residential and office buildings. She stated that between 2012 and 2014, an average yearly sum of 3.55 billion was spent on rent by the federal government of Nigeria.
Such huge figures we're seeing here, Rufai. The 12.3 billion naira, which is higher than the 11.2 billion set aside for the payment of rent in 2019 and 9.5 billion in 2018, seems to differ, according to social critics, from the policy of the president, whose administration usually converts property seized from alleged looters to government agencies.
Well, joining us now from our Abuja studios is Professor Isaac Obasi of the Department of Public Administration, University of Abuja. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Great. Now, in the past, there have been controversy over discrepancies between recovered loot, either those under interim forfeiture or permanent forfeiture, between the Federal Ministry of Finance and the Anti-Graft Agency. So let me begin by asking you really, how would you describe the process of recovered loot so far and the documentation process? Do you think it's transparent enough? Let's begin from there.
The question is direct. I wouldn't say it is transparent enough, because if it were, you wouldn't be having the discrepancy in the first place. I want to answer it just that way directly. Okay. That it's not transparent enough.
Great, but are you then concerned about how these recovered assets are being used? I mean, you had the intro. Despite these recovered assets, including structures, buildings, which have now been converted to offices, the federal government is still budgeting over 12 billion for rent.
Yeah, that's itself a big problem. Let me put another footnote to that answer I gave. Recently, just about last week, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation appropriated some powers, initially belonging to EFCC and ICPC with regards to management of forfeited properties. If there were transparency in the transactions, and I think that would have happened. That's number one. Two, to go to the second question you gave, which is how government has been budgeting for what ordinarily, by now, by its subsisting policy, should have withdrawn itself from renting. And when it is said that forfeited assets would be used. So I think there's a problem so far on our hands. And one of it is that the recording documentation, as rightly pointed out, needs to improve. It is not transparent so far. We don't right now. We just heard that there are over 180-something, about 182. I don't have the records. I'm not the one that generated it. Properties that have been in question for seizure. We don't know actually the number of those finally forfeited and which ordinarily should be used by government. If it's forfeited, it should be seen to be used like the ones Air Vice Marshal Barade had. We've seen it been given to some agencies, two of them, for instance. And we want to see others. If it is not done like that, we can't say it's transparent.
Okay. Professor Obasi, I've got a couple of questions anyway, but let me start this way. You talked about the fact of forfeiture, yes. And this is why I made a point about how authentic is this process. Let's not even forget that we've had multi parastatals that deal with it. Let's not forget, Obana Obla's own outfit, presidential recovery. And Obana Obla will claim that he had done some work as regards this, and he did recover some assets. So where are those assets? Take, for instance, from Obana Obla. And I also double up with one other question.
Yeah, where are the assets? Obasi is not the one to answer it. Those who are keeping records are doing public service, and we should take public service seriously. And let me make this point. We are underrating the power of self-interest and abuse of office in this country. We are underestimating the power of abuse of office. This is a daily occurrence. And somebody feels nobody's policing me, therefore, whatever I do is okay. I think we should respect the laws. If there are guidelines, on any issue, it should be followed. That's what makes governance easier. The moment the power of abuse of office, which manifests the driving force of that abuse of power, is self-interest. Self-interest. And that self-interest itself is also driven by conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, at the end of the day, is all about corruption. So, what we have in our hands is what we call institutionalized corruption. Call it legal corruption, where things that are ordinarily should not happen. Why would, from the presidency, National Security Advisor, EFCC, name all of the Ministry of Information, they are renting offices. They are paying for rent. They are also renting offices. Check the list published by Punch newspaper. Almost many of agencies, central agencies, core agencies, are renting buildings. Why will it be so? Okay. And that brings the issue of policy inconsistency. Policy inconsistency. We have monetization. We have, at the same time, a policy that makes sure that those who have been engaged by government are giving rent and consolidated salary. We have policy on consolidated salary and policy on monetization. Why would you allow what we call, a possibility of leakage happening? In other words, giving an allowance for abuse of office. If these are policies that are subsisting, they should be implemented. And if you have exceptions, fine, you define it, and that exception should be clearly spelled out so that people do not use their discretion, abuse their discretion, rather.
Okay, okay. Prof, one also quibble I have that bothers me is that when you go to Ikoyi, not far away from us here, you have a multi-billion-dollar worth of federal secretariats that is lying to a waste in that place. The carcass building and the structure is there. Just one or two touch-ups, you can turn that place into another federal secretariat, just like you have in Abuja. Why can't those people come to places like Lagos and decentralize even the role of Abuja in the spirit of, you know, federalism, as it were, rather than incur these humongous debts on taxpayers' money?
Yeah, you're talking of issue of federalism. Has the government accepted that it will operate through federalism? You can't do that by what you call backdoor. Just go to Lagos and take federal secretariat. But let me agree with you on a sincere note that there is a problem with management of federal government assets in Lagos. If it has been given to Lagos state government, it should be in proper use and should not lie waste. I confess, I agree with you that one can shed tears when you see that gigantic building wasting away in Lagos. And of course, any property that is not being used easily gets destroyed so fast. And it's not fair. I think there are many federal agencies that they can even occupy those places rather than just saying decentralize federalism. That's a big issue. This government is not dancing into it. If they want to, if they do that, we can address that one and use of property government outside Abuja. But let's face what is at hand. Government has no business spending humongous amount on rentage. On rentage. What is at play is abuse of power. Most of them who are in office have those properties. If not, they are cronies. Let me remind you why Abuja rent is so high. Those days when Abuja came up, those who have few buildings on Abuja were those who had powers, in public powers. And they made sure the houses rented, offices rented, were the ones owned by them. And they themselves were the judge in their own court. So they fixed the rent very high. That's why Abuja rent has never come down. And I have read somewhere, the instance past, where a government made a pronouncement that 20% of gross salary of income earners will not go on housing. I mean, tell me, where are we today? Check if somebody is paying 20,000, 200, any 2 million rather, any 2 million. Check the 20%. It will not get up to 9 or to 1 million. And yet, graduates who have worked for some years cannot find decent accommodation, flats, to live in Abuja. It's a shame.
Okay,
Government
so
has to come down hard on that.
Sorry to interrupt you, so we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about this some more. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still joined by Professor Isaac Obasi of the Department of Public Administration, University of Abuja. Now, before the break, we were talking about deteriorating houses in Ikoyi, but I want to bring your attention to the efficiency units that was set up in 2016 by the immediate past Minister of Finance, Mrs. Adeosun. Now, it was put together to cut the cost of governance, especially in the issues of rent. But why are we still seeing high numbers in 2019? Case in point, Police Affairs and its agencies are supposed to spend 103 billion naira on office rents and 357 million naira on residential rents. But if you look at the state of police barracks, police stations themselves, I mean, it's an eyesore. Why are we still having this issue when we have an efficiency unit set up? What is their job? What are they doing?
Good question, good question. The head of that efficiency unit, where is she now? She's the DG of DMO. So I don't know who is effectively directing that place now. And I must tell you that it was an intervention that was well received when the former Minister Adeosun established that efficiency unit. And it was indeed doing a couple of things to reduce the cost of governance. But I must tell you sincerely that the present government is not just, let me not just limit it to APC, regardless of which party is in power in this country right now. The governance system is very, very outrageously expensive. And we are not serious. Mentally, we are not serious. If we are serious, some of the things public officers are doing will not happen. Many cars they move along with will not happen. Charter plane they go alone for a trip will not happen. There are many things that are not, you can't think of it in other countries that are well organized. This country is not well organized as far as the system of governance is concerned, regardless of this government in power now. So I'm talking out of a system I know very well. We need to change our mentality about how we use public property. We think it is ours. In this country, we suffer what I call over-discretion, abuse of discretion. When I was in the University of Botswana, I teach my students that here you don't allow discretion at all in Botswana. They don't have discretion. That's one extreme. In Nigeria, we give discretion and it's 100% plus abuse. So we must get serious. Starting from the presidency, if we want to reduce costs, what we had of the other day last week is just periphery. If you want to reduce costs, there are several things they are doing that must reduce costs. Indeed. And if those who know what reduction of cost means, they will know that they've started. There was a time I compared the presidential initiative in reducing costs and the former Governor B's initiative in reducing costs in Anambra State. They are poles apart. If we start reducing costs, we know it.
And that brings me to my next question, which is about cost of governance. You've rightly said, just last week, the presidential spokesperson, Garba Shehu, did say that the controversial sack of the vice president's 35 aides was because of the cost of governance, trying to have a lean government. Yeah. And, you know, it's been revealed that we have over 700 federal government agencies in the country. How productive are these 700 agencies and above? Are they a necessity? Or can we begin to have a smart public service? Can we begin to merge these agencies and still have them work for the people?
You have hit it right. That's actually what I said. We are not serious we are just operating at the surfaces. When you talk about Steve Orosonya's report, a lot went into it. Government of Jonathan considered it and had a white paper. It had no courage to implement it. This government came, looked at the white paper, shoved it apart, established its own. I couldn't have courage. Called the BPSR to look at it again. BPSR looked at it. And yet, they were not satisfied because they lacked political courage to implement. And then they went again, called a donor agency to look at it. Something was done very radically, including telling government that many agencies that have 37 or from 36 to 37 commissioners in a federal agency based on one state could be reduced if you are reducing costs to 6 or 7. And if you do that, you would have removed a lot of the current costs. In fact, even some part of capital costs, because you have to buy a lot of things for them. So if we are serious as reduction, they might have to go back, see Orosanya report, not the original report. A lot of things have been done on top of it. That government has that, the report I'm talking about before government is right now. So 3 levels have looked at it, and government has a surer way of trying to see what can be done. The last aspect that was looked at it, in fact, even suggested where you can use excess staff of agencies that are going to be merged to other places where they are useful. Definitely. Nigeria needs more civil servants. Quote me, I teach public administration. We need more civil servants than even we have. But the thing that with us is that we are not using them well. And we are applying resources we have, other areas where they are not needed, wasting resources. If we do it right, Nigeria will make use of merging agencies, streamline agencies, composition of board members and the rest of them. You cut costs there, and you look at operations of government and see where you can shed costs. Not what we had last week. What we had last week is just mere superficies. And we have argued before that, in fact, beyond the office of the president, all the governors have a lot of political appointees that are redundant. So what we had last week is just at the surface. We still have a lot to do.
Okay, Prof. Real quickly, I just wanted to take you on this school of thought. And still in the spirit of reducing cost and owing to the fact that running government in this country is quite very big. I mean, Alex Oti wrote an op-ed there at the back of the These Day newspaper, and he talked about a concept, accelerated obsolescence. You know, the fact that these companies that make items and products, that make cars, for instance, always come out with a newer model. And it looks as though the government, too, runs quickly with that trend of accelerated obsolescence. Because when the new senators did come in, they said the older model of cars that they had before was not good enough. And there was nothing wrong with those cars. It was just like the model of refrigerators. We heard about some senators that packed rugs, refrigerators, and everything because the new senators said they are new format of things and we need to buy the new and current one. Are we okay?
Yeah, excellent piece and excellent comment. Excellent piece and excellent comment. I am one of those who feel that we don't have a mission in this country. If we have a mission, we won't be following every version of anything that comes. And that's where, looking forward, deepening our local content in terms of firms that can manufacture things and make them our own, while we can adaptively use what comes abroad. Take the case of phone, take the case of cell phone. Many years ago in the 2009, 2010, I told my student that BlackBerry, some of you who are using it now to harass others, in quotes, will be ashamed to bring it out one day. What are we saying? Where is BlackBerry today? The point I am making is that Nigeria behaves as if we're in our 18, you know, exuberance years, teens, where things fascinate you, you know. I cannot see why in this country everybody must go on a jeep. There's an agency and every director goes on a jeep. Come to the university, the only person qualified to ride a jeep is a VC. So why can't we learn to make do with things that can be helpful to the growth of this country? This is a country where we are talking about extremely marginalized and poor people, where we are using money to give them public money. There are many countries where the vice chancellor of my university, University of Botswana, was using Camry. Camry. And it was not in a dedicated Camry to his office. It's a Camry that is in the pool. I've once used that car to go for industrial attachment to supervise my students. My own vice chancellor, a professor of law, that's a car that pulled at the airport to carry him when we arrived at the airport together. The same car carried him, the same driver carried him. But that was a car assigned to me to go to somewhere and supervise students on industrial attachment. What are we talking about? When we live in this country as gods, how will the country develop? Please, we have not gotten it right. Governmentally, I'm not talking of party now. In terms of government, the National Assembly is in the loop of this, and I'm saying we've not gotten it right. We are just there enjoying privileges. And as Chimamadu said, you know, privileges blinds. And it blinds because it is its nature to blind. It blinds human beings. They won't see. People are suffering and dying in this country. And yet people are living as if they are in the moon. We should calm down and face Nigeria's problem. And it is we that can make it. That's why the closure of border, no matter it's double-edged sword, but it's good for me. Let us experiment and make use of certain things we have, improve it, and then see how we proceed from there. And let's give innovation a chance in this country. Innovation is not given a chance. Anybody who wants to innovate is killed by public policy. This one we know. So let us be serious if we want to develop this country. Otherwise, this country has no business talking about development. We have many development conferences happening every day. VP goes about talking about them. Nothing is happening in practice. That's my challenge of this government and the rest.
I think the word you said about privilege is very apt because Dwight Eisenhower, former American president, did say a country that values privilege over purpose will soon lose the privilege and purpose of the essence of nationhood. Is that what is happening to Nigeria as we wrap it up? And Cheita, you have a quick question you want to add to it?
Yes, real quickly as well. I wanted to just talk about the maintenance culture because it's one thing to, you know, have to rent an office, but then also maintain it and making sure that the next people that come in have something feasible to use. So let's quickly comment about that before we go on a break.
I agree that maintenance culture is important, but it's not fundamental. When we got other things right, the maintenance culture we key in, because abuse of public office due to private interest, conflict of interest, inconsistency of your policies, all these are combining to make mess of even the maintenance culture. Nobody budgets for it. If they budget, they eat it. Nobody maintains anything. Otherwise, the small roads, potholes we have on our roads would have been easily maintained before it gets into a ditch.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor. It's always a joy having you, Professor Obasi, Isaac Obasi there.